We're a little bit early, but we'll start because everybody seems to be here. So friends, colleagues, distinguished guests, regular faces and new faces, and there's a lot of new faces here today. My name's Richard Benjamin, and I'm the head of the International Slavery Museum. So on behalf of National Museums Liverpool, it's my pleasure to extend a warm welcome to everyone here today to the 20th Slavery Remembrance Day Libation. Now the libation will be performed by Chief Angus Chukwuemeka. Now Chief Angus is not only a long-time supporter of the International Slavery Museum, he's a respected community activist and the CEO of Crawford House Community Partnership in Toxteth, a social enterprise which provides education, employment and support for communities in the area. Now Chief Angus is also a member of the Respect Group, the International Slavery Museum's community advisory body. But before the libation commences, Courtney Jones and Layla Warwick, who are members of the museum's Young Ambassadors group, are briefly going to introduce, particularly for those people who are new to this event, Slavery Remembrance Day, and indeed Liverpool's links to the transatlantic slave trade. They will then be followed by Lois South, and Lois is a former member of the museum's Young Ambassadors group, and she's now also a member of the Respect Group. And Lois is going to tell you a little bit about a libation, what a libation means, and its significance. But before that, it's been a rather momentous few weeks, and we've got the Lord Mayor-elect, Councillor Anna Rothery, here, who's agreed just to say a few words before we actually start. So, Lord Mayor-elect Anna, if you'd just like to take the stage for a few minutes. Thank you.
Right, thank you. I'd just like to say a huge thank you because this is really my first official engagement as Lord Mayor-elect ahead of my inauguration on the 4th next month. And I can't think of a more appropriate place to be at this point in time. I've attended the Slavery Remembrance Day for many, many years, and to be standing in the same place that our African ancestors were first forcibly brought to the UK is in itself such a poignant moment for me, and as it is for everybody else. I feel as though our ancestors are actually looking down. For those who don't know, I'm the first Black Lord Mayor of Liverpool ever, which is a huge, huge honour. And I hope that going forward, it will give me the opportunity to celebrate our diversity and more importantly to respect our history and those that came before us that made this city the place that it is today. So thank you very much.
Today is the 20th annual Slavery Remembrance Day to be held at the International Slavery Museum. On the 23rd of August 1791, there was an uprising of enslaved Africans on the island of Saint Domingue, modern Haiti. This uprising was paramount in helping to end the European transatlantic slave trade. Therefore, the 23rd of August is an important date as it recognises that enslaved Africans played a vital role in achieving their own liberation. Slavery Remembrance Day allows us all to reflect on the atrocities of the slave trade and the impact it had on millions of lives. But, more importantly, today allows us to celebrate together the liberation of enslaved Africans and to appreciate the achievements and legacies of those from an African heritage.
Liverpool was an important city within the slave trade, with over 5,000 slave ships leaving this port during the 18th century. The earliest known Liverpool slave ship was the Liverpool Merchant, which departed for Barbados in 1699, with 220 enslaved African people on board. Later, in the 20 years before abolition in 1807, 75% of all slave ships across Europe came from Liverpool. The trade in people brought significant wealth to Liverpool and provided the money for the city to develop. There was also strong opposition to abolition in the city, but some notable campaigners against slavery from Liverpool were the writers William Roscoe and Edward Rushton. Today, it is important for those living in Liverpool to remember that many of the buildings we see, including the town hall, were financed through the profits from the slave trade, and many places, including Penny Lane, honour slave traders. Finally, as human beings, today is an opportunity to remember the suffering of enslaved people and celebrate liberation.
Today, we remember the pain and suffering of our ancestors, and also their strength and resistance. The libation ceremony is one of the oldest African rituals, where a drink offering, often alcohol or water, is offered to the Creator and to the ancestors. Libation allows us to remember and pay respect to our ancestors. The transatlantic slave trade was the largest forced migration in history, ripping millions of men, women, and children away from their homes, from their loved ones, stripping them of their dignity and their culture. The libation ceremony calls upon our ancestors not only to honor them, but it calls upon them to be present and bless the event. In this way, the libation allows us to give our ancestors the respect in death that they were not given in life. Performing libation today on Slavery Remembrance in Liverpool also allows us to acknowledge this city's contribution to the slave trade and seek justice. Liverpool was a major slaving port, and the legacy can be seen throughout the city as our roads, docks, and many of our buildings show the horrific legacy of the trade, which still affects people of African descent till this day. The libation ceremonies are traditionally performed by an elder, which this year will be community activist Chief Angus. During the libation ceremony, please join us in celebrating and remembering our ancestors. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. And thank you for the walk. It was a good exercise for all of us. And the weather was also nice. Thank you for the walk. I am delighted to recognize, it's purely part of the tradition, important guests who are here today to join us in this celebration, which has been taking place for the past 20 years. I'm delighted to welcome Dame Louise Elman. She's always joined us in this celebration. Welcome. Councillor Galimila, especially Mayor-elect Anna Rodri, who has introduced herself. We're delighted that you're here. I'm sure soon you'll be wearing that heavy chain. We're really proud that you're the first black mayor. Thank you for coming. Michelle Charters, the CEO for Kumbamani, Chief of Fable, Councillor Anna Rodri. And every year we do have friends from Manchester and all over the country, actually, but there's been some consistency in terms of people from Manchester joining us in this celebration. And I am proud to welcome Dr. Adi Onyenobi and her friend, all the guests from Manchester. Thank you for coming. I hope you will enjoy the celebration. And every one of you who's marched, who's walked, some form of exercise, but deep inside our minds, we know why we are doing it. The young ambassadors have already introduced the occasion, so I don't want to repeat it, but it's really nice that our younger generation understand their culture, because what happened 400 years ago affected all the three continents of Africa, Europe, and America. And it is a history that has made us what we are. And it's important that we remember it, and seeing the young ambassadors giving us the history of enslavement is very encouraging and something that will be passed down from generation to generation. Thank you, the young ambassadors, and round of applause. I have here on the podium, I wouldn't say all of them are elders, but yes, African elders who are going to join me to undertake this task. I have King Chief Anthony Okuko, Mr. Jabwe, and Chief Christian Chukwu. Mr. Ajabwe will be doing the ceremony of breaking the kola nut, which again I'm going to introduce before we start the ceremony, which is traditional in Africa. So I am going to ask Rama to produce the kola nut. The young lady, she's coming. Thank you. Now, I don't think most people know the significance of the kola nut. It goes, you cannot perform any libation without the kola nut. And the significance of the kola nut is stems from the fact that it's something that ushers unity and love. In Africa, if you have a visitor and you do not offer him or her a kola nut, he won't be happy. He will think that you are spawning for a fight. And also, the kola nut symbolically has so many, when you break it, it breaks into so many parts. And I think the idea, or what the ancestors tell us, is that the reason it breaks into parts is because it's not for one person to consume. And when it breaks, this one, for instance, has 5 segments. It means that I'm not the only one to eat it. I have to wait until I get 5 people to consume it. And that means ushering unity and peace and friendship. So that's really one of the reasons why we use the kola nut in starting an event of this nature. And this has gone on for thousands of years. Our ancestors have always used it for occasions of this nature, for weddings, for community gatherings, for anything that brings people together. It is a symbol of unity. So we will start by welcoming you to this event and thanking the museum that is hosting it. I will start by, first of all, giving one kola nut to the museums, and I would ask the director of the museums, Sarah Pai, are you here?
Right hand.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the director of Liverpool Museums. This is her second year of being with us. This ceremony, the libation, we welcome her to Liverpool. She's a Liverpoolian anyway, so she's not strange in the city. But we give her a round of applause again. Thank you. I will give one to the Lord Mayor-elect for the City Council. I do hope when you're inaugurated, you're going to invite all of us to support you. Councillor Nagadre. I will give one to Dame Louis Salmon, please, representing the government, I think. He's a member of parliament. Thank you. Well, I think I must have to give one to Councillor Garimila, who is a deputy mayor, isn't it? Councillor Garimila, you have to give this to the Mayor Anderson. Now, I've got somebody here who represents the Commonwealth. Yes, I do recognize you, Gert Lagers. Yes, Gert is the new chair of the Liverpool Commonwealth Association. He's done a lot to bring all the members of the Commonwealth together, and things are really buzzing in the city. Initially, Councillor Garimila was the chair. Is now the president, and Gert is now the chair. Gert, I welcome you on behalf of the Liverpool Commonwealth Association. Unfortunately, we haven't got enough kola nut for you. Now, we've got the kola nut that everybody will partake in it, but we will have one that will have to be blessed. And the idea of blessing it is to invite our ancestors to join us in this celebration, because that's what this is all about. We are here to remember ancestors. In Africa, that's so important that whatever we do, our ancestors come first, because we believe they are there looking after us. So I'm going to invite Mr. Jabwe to bless this and break it officially. After that, the rest of the broken ones will be distributed to everybody. And then you can have it if you don't. I think that is a health and safety issue about it, the kola nut containing caffeine. So if you're not comfortable with it, please don't eat it. Thank you. What is nice, anyway. Can I now call on Mr. Jabwe to bless the kola nut?
Thank you, Chief Angus. My name is Uyewole Ajagbe. from southwestern parts of Nigeria, Yoruba by ethnicity. So the Yoruba language, as actually we are here today, most of the Yoruba language is spoken within the southwest part of Nigeria, but a large sum of slaves taken to Brazil, so Yoruba language is also spoken in Brazil, and that's the significance of what I'm saying here today. So in the Yoruba language, God, as we all call, or is actually, we have a lot of names in Yoruba language for God. Eledumare, Olorun, Oba Ogo. So it's actually, I can go on countless. So my job today is to break this kola nut in the name of God, and that's what I'll be saying that in Yoruba language, to appease our ancestors who have been actually shackled over the years of slave trade. Olúwa, Olódùmarè, Ọba Ògo, a péjọ lónìí bí a ṣe ń péjọ ní ọdọọdún láti ṣe ètùtù fún àwọn bàbá wa tí wọ́n ti fún ní ìdè láti mú wọn ní ẹrú wá sí ìlú òyìnbó. À ń pè Olódùmarè Ọba Ògo àti àwọn aṣíwájú wa tí wọ́n ti mú ní ẹrú kí ó dáríjì wá gbogbo ẹ̀ṣẹ̀ tí a ti ṣẹ̀ nípa pé wọ́n ti mú wa ní ẹrú, kí ó fi ojú ọ̀run tó tóbi kí ó fi wò wá lónìí pẹ̀lú gbogbo àwọn tí wọ́n wà níbí, kí ó ṣe ìtọ́jú wa nígbà tó bá parí ètò lónìí, kí ó jẹ́ kí ó yọ sílísí rere, kí ó ní kálukú wa tá a wá síbí lónìí kí a padà síbi tí a ti wá lágbára Elédùmarè Ọba Ògo. Àṣẹ.
The rest of the kola nut will have to be passed around, and take one if you would like. It's just a symbol of unity, a symbol of you coming here to share this occasion with us. It's going to be passed around, and you pick one. I'm eating mine now. Of slave trade, we do remember those as well who have lost their lives fighting for social justice and equality. I'll now start with the libation, and the libation is an African traditional ceremony of remembrance. I will be recognizing all ancestors and remembering their sufferings and asking them to forgive us. This act was performed by also our ancestors. We're talking about 400 years ago, even though now there is this idea of modern day slavery where people are still enslaved in some form or the other. But what we're doing today is predominantly about those who were victims of the transatlantic slave trade, which happened for nearly 400 years. Okay. Almighty God, the creator of the universe and all that is within it, we, the citizens of Liverpool, are pouring this libation today to remember our king's men and women who were forcefully uprooted from their homes in Africa and put to work as slaves in America. We present this drink to you today and ask you to humbly bless it. Today, we remember the trauma and sufferings and humiliation that took place during the enforced journey. We also remember those who were thrown overboard because they were not economically viable. These are human beings. We solemnly pledge that we wouldn't want this act to ever happen again in human history. Let's therefore use this occasion to promote equality, to promote fairness, to promote justice among us and in the whole world. Our enslaved brothers and sisters, we are gathered here today to beg you to forgive us from your sufferings and humiliation. Today we remember you and will continue to remember you and remember your sufferings. We ask you to forgive us, and we pledge that this horrendous act will never happen again. We also celebrate, and not just remember, we celebrate. And what do we celebrate? We celebrate the bravery of those ancestors of ours who challenged the act of enslavement, who fought for equality. They fought because the act of slavery did not break their spirit, because they believe that they had the same rights. They were created by the same God as those who enslaved them, and fought bravely against enslavement. Of course, as we know, the consequence of their resistance was unimaginable. Some were put to death. Some were punished in such a way that they wished they were dead. But it didn't break their spirit. They continued to fight until they liberated themselves. And actually, it was the black man that liberated himself. So we celebrate that. We celebrate that bravery. and celebrate everybody who fights for equality, who challenges unfairness in our society. Because it isn't easy. You face all sorts of criticisms, to challenge racism, to challenge unfairness. People have often given their lives to do it. So we celebrate this. We celebrate their bravery. While we are remembering our ancestors, we also have to remember those English men and women who recognized the unfairness of slavery and spoke out against it. They raised awareness of the atrocities of enslavement and campaigned tirelessly for its abolition. We remember such person as William Wilberforce. We remember Clarkson. And recently, we remember Edward Rushton. I said that this man has to be remembered. He wasn't a famous man. Often we do remember famous people, forgetting the ordinary people who fought tirelessly for the abolition. Edward Rushton, his history is such that we need to recognize his bravery. He was a midshipman who worked on one of the British ships that sailed to, I think it was Jamaica. And during the voyage, most of the slaves caught an eye disease that blinded them. Because as you know, these slaves were put in the hull of ships and often brought out maybe once a day to see the daylight and taken down again in chains. So any infectious disease any of them had would spread like wildfire. He was touched by it. It was just an ordinary midshipman. He had no power. And he used to sneak down the hull of the ship to attend to those slaves who were losing their eyesight. And in the process, he caught the illness and went blind. When he came ashore, of course, he lost his job. But that didn't stop him. I don't know if you've heard of William Rushton. He continued to fight until his voice, of course, was heard. But he was a Liverpool citizen here. So I remember about 4 years ago, going to honor his grave with the Lord Lieutenant and the Lord Mayor. So also remember him. Finally, we appeal to ancestors. We appeal to the spirit of ancestors and ask them for forgiveness. We ask them for forgiveness for their suffering. And as we depart from this event today, we should not just have it as a yearly event. We should also always challenge unfairness, challenge racism in our society, challenge all forms of indignity that human beings suffer. Because that's a proof that today's event is a worthwhile event. So I thank you all for coming, and hope that every year as we remember our ancestors, you will join us. And I'm happy the participants today, the number is so great that I'm so delighted that it appears the message is getting home, because nobody likes unfairness. Nobody likes to be humiliated. Nobody likes to suffer the sort of indignity that our enslaved ancestors suffered. Nobody, no human being will. So as we depart from here, we pledge to challenge all forms of inhumanity committed by our fellow human beings. We pledge to promote equality, because it was the attitude of superiority that was partly due to the enslavement of Africans. We pledge to treat everybody as equal, because we all created equal by God. So I thank you all for coming to this event. I thank the members of the Slavery Museum, led by Dr. Richard Benjamin. I thank all the members and of the Respect Group, Anna Rodri, Lord Mayor Anna Rodri, Michelle Chatters, and many others who are here today who made this occasion a very memorable one. I thank all of you again for coming, and hope you will join us again next year. Thank you very much. I just want to make an announcement that it is a traditional practice after an event of this nature. We have some refreshments, and we will be having some refreshments at Crawford House, so you're all invited. A coach will be leaving here to take people to Crawford House for refreshment.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming here today. I think we are in the final part of this libation, which is the most important one. To tap into those connections between us that are still living and our forefathers that have gone. As we do this, we pray that their spirit will continue to guide and protect us. So I've been given the opportunity to make the final prayers. We know that in due course to come, you will see more cultural aspect of what we do. So Heavenly Father, today, I pray for our ancestors that have left us. Our fathers, our mothers, uncles, brothers, sisters, extended families that was taken into slavery many years ago. This water today that you see has a lot of meaning because many souls were lost here and unsure as well. As Chief Ambrose has rightly said, what we pray is for such things never to happen again. So, as you all have here today to pay our respect to them, we pray that the Almighty God will continue to bless and guide us in Jesus' name. Thank you. You can all drop your flowers in to tap into that connection with to ancestors. Yeah? For those of you who would like to hang, because when you have kola, it always goes with the offering. Please, if you want to have a bit of it, kindly come close to me so you can have a bit of it, please. Yeah?